Okay, it's 7:59. I'm going to call to order this August 9th, 2012 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. First order of business is approval of minutes of meetings. And we first have the July 26th minutes.
Move approval of the July 26 minutes.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, and next is the August 3rd minutes. Oh, July 30th, I'm sure, sorry, July 30th first. And
Do we make the motion first or make a change?
Um, yeah, you probably should make the change first, yes. So we can vote as amended, yeah.
I'm wondering if we can include in number 7 at the end of number 7, I'm sorry, at the end of the first paragraph, number 7, Mr. Flynn's response.
Mr. Flynn, what?
His response. If we can include, Mr. Flynn's response was that no severance or compensation would have to be paid to Mr. Myrne as per the language in the contract.
I think if we're going to quote him, we have to quote him.
Verbatim.
I wouldn't want to quote him and misquote him, and we typically don't. We usually in minutes just say what transpired, not necessarily the response of people. I mean, I can understand why you might want it in there, but you know, I would think unless we have exactly the way he said it could be taken out of context.
Right.
Because he was speaking from a legal standpoint, and one word misplaced can very drastically change the meaning of a...
Do you want to table the minutes pending his advice?
Mr. Chairman, we also do have the tape of that meeting, so his direct speaking will be on the tape. His direct answering the questions will be on the tape.
Okay. Can we get that and include it?
We do keep the tapes, yes.
Yeah.
So I suppose, yeah, I have no problem with that if we want to put in exactly his response.
You okay with that?
Okay. Yeah, so I think a motion to table would be in order.
Well, I don't think, I mean, you can if you want, but I don't think you have to, because we do have the tapes, and
Yeah.
you can just make the motion
To,
to
Include the exact language.
include the exact language. Right?
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'd be okay with that.
So you're making a motion subject to the change to include after the first paragraph in item number 7,
Yes.
the exact language of John Flynn's response to the severance pay issue.
Yes.
And is that seconded?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And then we have August 3rd.
On the August 3rd minutes, I just had one comment that I think should be clarified. I received some emails from people stating that citizen speak wasn't on the agenda.
Yes, it was not.
It wasn't on the agenda, but we agreed that we could have people come up.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted that clarification. It doesn't have to be put in, but I just wanted the public to know that.
Okay.
Even though it's not on the agenda, we did agree that it was okay. I'll move approval of the, where are we? Of the August 3rd, 2012 minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Confirmation of future meeting dates. At this point, we have August 23rd as our next meeting. And again, that will be an 8 o'clock meeting.
It could be 6:30 now.
Oh, 6:30 is okay?
Yeah, want
By
to
all
go back to the
means,
6:30?
Okay, 6:30 is fine.
August 23rd?
Yes.
What day of the week is that? Is it?
I don't know, it's my birthday, though.
Oh, you-
It's
are you
a
kidding me?
Thursday?
It's a Thursday.
Thursday, okay, so Thursday, August 23rd at 6:30?
Okay. We have item 4 on the agenda is citizen speak. Are there any citizens out there that wish to come up and address the board? Good. Who wants to be first? Deborah.
Good evening.
Deborah.
Deborah Felton. I'm here as the Executive Director of Fuller Village. I'm also a town meeting member from Precinct 2. I'm here I know you're going to be getting a report from the Traffic Commission, and the item is the change on Neponset Valley Parkway and Brush Hill Road. So I'm here really on behalf of my residents because they're the ones that have been pushing this. I think about 3 years ago, Betsy Bookbinder, who's also a town meeting member, spoke at town meeting. She had gathered a petition from my residents supporting this intersection, a small change at Brush Hill Road, how it comes out to Neponset Valley Parkway. And I know the Traffic Commission has met on this a few times, and I just want to urge you to support that change really on behalf of the 400 people that I have living at Fuller Village. And I think it will make a much safer intersection for them. And I know I use that road to go home, and it's just as scary for me as it is for them. So I hope that you do support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Roxanne? Hey, Bob.
Good evening, I'm Bob Sheffield. I'm a member of the board of Fuller Village. I have been since its origination some 15 years ago. And if I can suggest that there's really one continuing problem with the residents of Fuller Village because of their elderly age and timidness in driving. They are very, very concerned about the intersection of Neponset Valley Parkway and Brush Hill Road. I think some improvement to it really needs to be made, and I would encourage the selectmen to support that effort. We have 315 units with over 400 drivers that is in the immediate vicinity of that road, and they either have to go through that intersection or go through the intersection at 138 and Brush Hill Road in order to get out. And I think that's a very, very important traffic improvement that needs to be made, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. Roxanne?
Good evening. My name is Roxanne Musto. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 5 and member of the board of the Brush Hill Area Neighborhood Association.
Hi, Roxanne.
Members of the Board of Selectmen, the Brush Hill Area Neighborhood Association, several neighborhood associations in Hyde Park and Reedville, as well as state representatives and senators from Boston, all oppose the proposal to change Neponset Valley Parkway at Brush Hill Road. I wish to offer to the board a letter from a state senator and state representative from our neighbors in Hyde Park, who again are staunchly opposed to this proposal. Thank you. I only have one copy, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else who'd like to address the board? Hello.
My name is Glenn Beecham, and I live at Neponset Valley Parkway. And I'd just like to really implore the selectmen to be involved in this matter. This has been an ongoing matter for many years now. I've been involved with this for about 15 years, and it's really a new group of selectmen, so I just am requesting you to be really involved in this and to learn that that there are two sides to this story, and it isn't a simple matter. It's not just a matter of studying or looking at a traffic study and agreeing with a recommendation that someone may have made. It is further looking at the problem as many other people see it. There are more people involved in this matter than the 400 people spoken about at Fuller Village. I can, you know, I can vouch for the fact that there are thousands of people that are going to be that are going to be affected by any changes made here. And so I just hope that the selectmen look at this very carefully and allow some kind of public input to this problem if possible, so that all sides can be heard equally and justly. That's
Yep.
all.
Diane?
Good evening, Diane DiTullio Agostino, Town Meeting Member Precinct 9 and former Milton Selectman. Thank you very much for Citizen Speak being on the agenda, even if it was forgotten last time. Here just to comment on a big job, probably the biggest job you have in the near future. And to remind you something that your mom and dad probably once taught you: if you're going to do something, do it right. And it pertains to discussions of the replacement for the town administrator. And of course, everyone in town is talking about a search committee. And what I'm here to implore you to do is to, first of all, as a Board of Selectmen, spend the time to review the job description as well as the contract that you might be looking at. While you'll negotiate with whoever you do ultimately employ, as far as the contract goes, I can explain to you that when I was on the board, I was chair of a committee with Mr. Cronin, and we did a study of whether or not to change from a executive secretary to a town administrator or to a town manager. Now, to go to a town manager, you would have to change the bylaws, so I don't know if you have time for that, although we do have 2 town meetings a year. But I think that people need to take this time and not be in such a rush. I mean, you have a very capable acting town administrator who's been here for years, and as long as you're comfortable with that, then please, please take the time. The information from the study committee on the way in, I bumped into my former colleague, Mr. Neely, and I told him I actually still have all that study information. I'm going to give it to him because of his committee he's working on, just to look back. And of course, there's a lot of new information that the Mass Municipal Association would have to share with you, because they were helpful. And secondly, after you've taken that time, once you do move forward and think about a search committee, I'm here to publicly offer my services to be on that committee. I'm sure you haven't even thought about comprising, you know, which aspect of the citizenship you might have on it, but I did want to make those 2 points. And of course, everyone who spoke before me, I totally agree with them, because my parents live up there, and I think it's long overdue. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but there's just going to be one serious accident too many up there. So thank you so much, and the best of luck with everything you're working on.
Thank you.
Take care.
Anybody else? Okay. Before we start with the rest of the agenda, I was really amiss. I should have done it earlier, but we've lost a dear friend, and I'd like to just take a moment of silence. Ann White passed, was it Tuesday?
Monday night.
Monday night. Ann, you know, a good friend of us all, is a town meeting member since 1998, warrant committee member from 96 to 99, and personnel board from 2001 to 2012. And she was also a recent member of the Fuller Village Retirement Community. Yeah, Ann, like I said, I worked with Ann on the warrant committee when she was on the planning board, and there couldn't be a nicer person in the world, and we're all going to miss her. So I'd just like to take a moment of silence. Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda is the Town Government Study Committee update from Rick Neely. Rick, you want to come up? How's everything going?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Anne Marie and Paula.
Good evening.
Well, it's nice to be back here. It's been a few years since I've been up here. As well as being chairman of the Town Government Study Committee, Precinct 3 town meeting member as well, and former member of the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, Warrant Committee, Pension Study Committee, and Bicycle Safety Committee. So, had a few chances to be in this building.
Rick, why don't you first, because I'm not sure if Dennis was on the board when the committee was formed, so just kind of go over what the charge of the committee was and just get people up to date a little bit then.
Certainly, I'll give you a little background. The committee is made up of 10 members, and 8 of which were appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and 2 of which were appointed by the moderator. We started meeting in February, mid-February. That was the first meeting. And the charge to the committee is really pretty broad. We've been asked to consider, for example, regionalization, consolidation of services, improvements in the town, creation of potentially a town manager or a CFO position. We've also been asked to look at various combinations of town services, as well as the town governance structure. So it's really such a broad mandate that our second meeting was held for the purposes of really having a whiteboard session. And so we had the members of the committee get together, and we did a whiteboard session where we ended up with about 50 ideas on a whiteboard, and you can look at those and consolidate them into about 11 areas, functional areas. And if you looked at those functional areas, you describe them as financial, technology, governance, planning, regionalization, revenue enhancement, and municipal service delivery improvement. So those are some functional areas, and members of the committee have been focusing on various areas of that. We've had 8 meetings to date overall. We've met with, for example, the police chief, the DPW director, the cemetery superintendent and board members, the park superintendent and board members. We've met with the school business official and the school IT official. We've also, chairman of the planning board at the time, Emily Ennis, the town treasurer, town accountant, and we've met with the IT managers in both the schools and the town. So we've had a considerable, really broad review of various functional areas in those 8 meetings. Over the next 3 months, we'll be looking at considering taking votes on a series of recommendations. You remember that really we're sort of on a mandate to report to you, this board, by December 1st, with the town meeting report next spring. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Town Government Study Committee is really a continuation of improvements that have taken place over 50 years. So if you look back at this is not just a one-time event. If you look back at the town and you look at this town compared to many other towns, there's been a series of changes that have occurred over the years. So a number of boards that were elected boards have disappeared. I'll give you an example. This board is now the water commissioner and sewer commissioners. Each of those were separate boards. So you had boards that were eliminated over the years. There was a elected tree warden. That was eliminated over the years. There used to be separate departments in the DPW. So the DPW itself is a recognition over the years of a consolidation of services where there was forestry departments and other departments that were brought in together. So I think if you look at this and say, we're not going to accomplish everything in 1 year because we've been a continuous series of improvements, and the goal is to have a series of process improvements and governance improvements. We really also need feedback, and so we hope to get feedback from various officials and town boards to get a sense of what people want. And let me give you an example. I spoke to in Barnstable. In Barnstable, for example, they consolidated the financial positions with the school department. And in that case, it wasn't for the goal of just cost savings. It was for improved financial reporting. But that was something that was expressed by the various town departments. And that was really sort of a bottoms-up approach where the various business units, if you will, the various departments said, we would like improved financial reporting. So it didn't necessarily result in a reduction in cost, but it resulted in really a centralized approach and a coordinated approach, and it benefited the town. So that the Barnstable official said the school superintendent and the school committee were very supportive of that. And that would be true in terms of any position you're looking at. You need to sit back and say, look at the benefits. So let me just give you some examples that we're looking at, we've looked at so far. We've looked at maintaining representative town meeting, but potentially reducing the size of it. There's no magic number. The committee is going through that. Linked into that has been a suggestion that the town election be held after the town meeting. That's been described to us as occurring in some towns in a number of places. So those are some examples. Obviously, as we talked earlier, we're talking about financial management. Potentially, one of the ideas is the Department of Revenue, for example, has done some 75 studies across other towns and made recommendations for free, if you will, not a consultant service, but a service of municipal services. And they would look at the various financial operations and for your board, for this board here, recommendations in terms of how the town would benefit. And I have a copy of the study, what took place in Arlington this past year, and a list of all the towns that have utilized that service. Those towns then have the choice whether they want to adopt any or all of the recommendations.
Can I jump in? Rick, is that recommendations from feedback you got from the public, or is that what the board has been?
This is from our group. This is
just from your group?
From the 10 members of the group. We're just looking at that.
Okay. But you haven't got any feedback from the public yet, no?
We really have not received.
I think at this point, all we've really done is just talk to town departments in terms of.
Obviously, a town
gathering
meeting, was
information.
the only, the town meeting was a lengthy discussion about maintaining the representative town meeting. So certainly the members of the 10 members of the committee heard that. That doesn't mean we still have, we're just looking at the size of the town meeting. And still there's some, people have certainly mentioned that other towns in the neighboring area have changed from an existing board of selectmen to a town council. That's been mentioned. But, there's certainly a lot of options out there. So we are really, as I say, we're in the brainstorming session. Some of the other ideas that we're looking at that have been presented to us, looking at improvements, in terms of providing IT services. We have, in one example, for example, there has been an IT committee that is not active at the present time. And the change in the IT technology world is so great that the town, I remember my days here, struggles to keep up with all the changes that go on in both hardware and software. And so there's a need to really look at the IT services. And so we'll potentially have recommendations on that area. Some of that, again, and again, this is also related to even, if you go back to pilot, we have people looking at the pilot, revenue enhancement. Certainly there's been a pilot committee in the past, there's been reports in the past, but there's, in cases we need to do renewed emphasis in these areas. So those are some of the areas, examples of, that's the revenue enhancement example. Other areas we're looking at in terms of, I think Diane Agostino spoke to that a minute ago in terms of the town administrator, but certainly in terms of looking at strengthening the town administrator or considering a town manager form of government. That's something, as Diane pointed out a few minutes ago, it was looked at in the past, certainly can look at it again in the future. If you go to a town administrator, it might be delegating more authority or more jobs or, control over more jobs to the various, to the town administrator. If you go to a town manager, for example, the town manager would appoint a police chief, for example, or a fire chief or something like that. So you need to look at what the board wants to, have for its responsibility versus what the town administrator's responsibility is. So, again, these decisions are going to end up back, recommendations and what you do with them would end up back here. So I think in terms, I just gave you a sample in terms of what we're looking at. Those have not been voted or approved, and some of those may not make it here. So again, we're still reviewing this, and there's a lot of material from looking at what the neighboring cities and towns have done in the Commonwealth in terms of the various services, and there's been consolidation of IT services in other towns, and again, there's been some consolidation of financial services. We certainly also have looked at Regional 911. The police chief talked to us about that. We've also talked with the DPO director about various services that are being provided. So all that's in consideration. I'll entertain some questions.
Have you given any consideration to a bigger committee here, like 5-member Board of Selectmen versus a 3?
Yeah, that was mentioned. That was on the wall in the brainstorming. It really hasn't evolved. It hasn't. It was mentioned. It was certainly brought up initially. There hasn't been a lot expressed on that since then. Again, we're focusing so far more on the governance of the town meeting and the town administrator and town manager. It certainly may come up again.
But yeah, basically the charge of the committee is, and it kind of stems from, my years on the warrant committee, but Essentially, revenue increases by about 1.8, 1.9% per year, even with, and about 80% of the budget's salaries. Even with modest 2.5% increases in salaries, add in the other fringe benefits that increase, it's a broken model. It doesn't work.
Right.
It can't be sustained. If revenue's only going to go up by 1.8% and expenses are going to go up by more than that, you either diminish services or you lay people off, or you find a way to generate new revenue, or you change the model. And I guess the best way to look at this is what this committee will hopefully come out with is some kind of a master plan that we can take a look at and decide where to go with all of it, pieces of it. And I think at that point, we would probably have a public vetting process as we discuss it to get some citizen feedback. But it really not the charge of this committee per se to talk about, although they certainly could, what the selectmen's position might look like, other than if they decided to go, with a town, town council form of government is the best route to go, and you have a mayor, that's clearly a change. But short of that, I'm not sure adding or subtracting people from the board was necessarily.
It could come back up. I mean, it just hasn't been mentioned as much. I actually understated as much in terms of master plan is a good key word there. We did with Emily Ennison review in terms of the master plan, and we certainly as a committee are supportive of a broad representation and a vision. We think the master plan for the town is long overdue to be revised. And certainly some of the suggestions we looked at and are looking at in other towns is greater coordination between the planning board and the board of selectmen. In some places, for example, the planning board is appointed by the board of selectmen. So, and you have other places where there are ongoing revisions to a master plan as part of a regular occurrence. This has been 1977 or 78 since the last master plan, which I think I have in the house turning yellow. So, if you have a process of revising the plan every 3 to 5 years with community participation and a broad representation and more coordination with this board, that might be helpful also. And we looked at this in the context as well with commercial development initiatives, affordable housing, and looking at fast-track commercial development. So those are some areas that we're interested in seeing some progress on. So that's the report for now.
Okay. Any other questions for Rick? Or?
I don't know. I think it's,
Rick, thank you
been a
very
good
much.
job. Yeah,
Looking
thanks.
forward to that report.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is discussion of Town Administrator's Search Committee. And I'm going to kind of broaden that a little bit to be the discussion of that plus the characteristics that we're looking for. We can kind of have a discussion about that. But before we start that, and if you just bear with me for a moment, and I do have something, because it's been bothering me, that I just want to get out a few words, and my fellow selectmen can speak to the issue if they want to also, but I'll just read what I've written, and it's really come from my heart. But I feel I have to speak my conscience and say one last word regarding what has transpired over the past week. If any of my fellow selectmen would like to speak to this issue as well, they're welcome to do so. We're the Board of Selectmen of the town of Milton, and we have the absolute right and authority to replace the town administrator. It was clear that 2 members of the board desired to do just that. That is their right, and they have the majority of the votes. I do not take exception with the vote itself. It is reality, and we will abide by it. I do take exception to the manner in which the process took place. What we as a board did to Kevin Murm was degrading, humiliating, and mean-spirited. It was tantamount to a crucifixion of a person who committed no crime. No employee, for that matter, no person, should be subject to such public humiliation. Replacing the town administrator could have been accomplished in a respectful, civilized manner to allow all parties to walk away with dignity and to to maintain respect of the office that we hold. We chose not to do that. I feel that I may have partly played a part in this spectacle by not properly controlling the meetings, allowing votes to be taken that were not legal, and not sufficiently explained to the board the alternatives that could have dignified the process. If so, I take full responsibility for that, and I apologize to Kevin, to the town, and I apologize to my fellow selectmen. We must work together, and we will work together as a board to carry out our responsibilities to conduct and oversee the operations of the town of Milton. This is the Board of Selectmen, 3 members working together towards a common goal for the good of the town. It should not be 3 individuals carrying out their own personal agendas. What we have done is done. We cannot undo it. We can, however, respect our differences, join together, and do what the voters elected us to do, namely weigh all the facts and make thoughtful decisions for the benefit of the town of Milton. I throw down the challenge to my fellow selectmen. And with that,
Mr. Hurley, I'd like to just respond briefly. First of all, I want to say that as one member of this board, I was keenly aware of the results of the most recent town election. And I was well aware of what Mr. Cohen's platform was. I also am aware of the difficulties that I personally have had, but being a selectman for more than 2 years now. I had difficulty establishing a professional relationship with the town administrator. And on either June 11th or June 12th, I mentioned to the town administrator where I stood on the matter, that I was not leaning towards renewing his contract. I was perfectly clear. What I was hoping for was that the town administrator would see the handwriting on the wall and would do what so many other administrators have done in the past in various occupations, taken the high road and gone into retirement. That didn't happen. We all know it didn't happen. And I was dismayed that even after a vote was taken not to renew the contract, that the town administrator was reported back in his office the next day. I was very disappointed with that. And the end result of that was an 11-point motion that I made that was approved. And as I've said, I haven't cited specifically, and at this point in time, I don't think I wish to. I have not come out with a list of reasons why I opposed Mr. Murrin. Again, my feeling is take the high road, Bob, and that's what I try to do. I don't want to put my laundry list in public. If I feel that someday that might be beneficial, then I would consider doing that. But there are, and people are going to have to just take me at my word, there are many justifiable reasons why I had not to take the position not to renew the town administrator's contract. I've respected his many years of service to this town. I respected the fact that there was a good showing one evening, and I respected his children for coming and speaking on behalf of their father. That meant something for me. It didn't change my position. The decision's been made. It's the prerogative of the selectmen. The burden's on us to decide whether or not we wanted Kevin Murrin as our town administrator. It was a difficult burden for all 3 selectmen. The majority of us made a decision, and it's time to move on.
And I'd just like to further add, what I was trying to say is I don't take exception to the vote. I just take exception to the process by which it was done. It was degrading, it was humiliating and mean-spirited, and I don't think it had to be. I don't think we ever gave him the chance to try and negotiate with him in terms of a retirement, and I think that was wrong. You would not have done that. I would not have done that to any of my employees.
If I can say something. I'm looking at the agenda here, and I had this on my computer 2 days ago, 3 days ago maybe. And we had plenty of time to go over this and prepare for tonight. But I think it's very, very unfair of Mr. Hurley to throw this on the table. When he was prepared, he had a prepared statement and didn't give us the opportunity to actually prepare a response. I do have a response, but not right now, the way it was presented. Again, I think it's very, very unfair that you should bring this up at this time without giving us time to prepare a response. And I will not respond at this time.
Yeah, prerogative. Okay, with that, who wants to start the discussion for search of a new town administrator? We do in our packet have minutes from the last time a town administrator was, a search committee was formed and who was on that committee. I have some thoughts myself. And again, I don't think we're necessarily going to come to a conclusion here tonight, but at least we can start the discussion. I guess one thing I'm concerned about is, to make sure that we have an impartial committee, to make sure we have a well-represented committee. I would prefer not to see any selectmen, any of us, on that committee. I would prefer to see a committee that is comprised of townspeople, professionals, and perhaps a town administrator from another town, which is commonly done with other positions when you replace them. Like, for example, fire chief, is generally taking a fire chief from another town for the search committee. Police chief, I believe, is the same thing, and I think it may be proper here. What we can also discuss is whether we want to perhaps not do that and go with just a professional search. I go to the MMA and ask them about firms that do professional searches for town administrators, or a combination of both, where we have a local committee with a professional consultant to help them with the advertising part, the actual search part, and then have the citizen committee actually do the interviews and the screening process, but not necessarily the outreach search process, and have somebody that would be more or less an expert to bounce ideas off of. So those are a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking a bit along the lines that you are. I see it as the approach as one of two ways. One, you either appoint a committee to seek candidates, maybe to do initial screening. You could also advertise for the position in, like, the Beacon brochure, where that's a brochure that goes basically, I think, pretty much statewide, lists various job openings in different communities, and municipal people are well aware of that, so that might catch a qualified candidate's eye. Another thought process that I have is whether or not we wish to hire a paid professional consultant, such as, it looks like this person that you received a letter from Municipal Resources.
Right.
That this Alan Gould has offered his professional services, so they're out there.
Correct.
And I've done, actually, I can tell you this, that former school superintendent Frank Giuliano, when he was hired, it was that the school board at the time hired one person, a professional, skilled in seeking out qualified superintendent candidates, and then that professional narrowed the field down, and that at that point in time, there were 6 school committee people. That professional narrowed it down to 3, and then 2 school committee members each then went to the candidate's home district to try to get the scoop on that candidate, and then we came back to the table and made our recommendations. So the way I see it right now, you've got probably 2 options. One, think about a committee, or 2, think about hiring a professional consultant,
And like I said, we can do a combination of both.
or a combination of both, yeah.
Yeah, you can just have one consultant that does the outreach and the committee doing the interviewing, screening of, those people that the professional did the outreach.
In this day and age, it's amazing how word gets out there via the internet of job openings.
Sure.
I remember when Mr. Ritchie was a candidate for Consolidated Facilities Director, the applications for the Milton Consolidated Facilities position came in from all over the United States, Texas, and everywhere else. So the town administrator's job in Milton is a desirable position, and I think that that's going to attract a lot of qualified candidates from all over.
I think the other thing we have to do is, and I think it was already raised here, is we definitely have to take a look at the job description and make sure that that is the job description that we want. If we want to make changes to it, perhaps look at job descriptions for town administrators and town managers in other towns, and which should be easy to come by, and come up with a job description, as well as what we are looking for qualifications and characteristics. I mean, I've thought about some of the qualifications and characteristics. I've got a list.
There is a difference in terminology, like Milton had an executive secretary and then went one step further and went to the position of town administrator. And there's an obvious difference between, and it's not just in words, an obvious difference between a town administrator and a town manager in terms of what their functions are and what their powers are.
There can be.
A town administrator works under the direction of a board of selectmen.
Right. The difference, though, is in the Massachusetts general law, there really is no per se town manager position. It's mayor or it's board of selectmen. To get anything in between requires home rule petition.
Yeah.
So
But
you can change it, but
I
it is a
was talking
change.
about existing conditions.
Yes.
Like right now, Randolph has
Has a town manager.
decided that it's going to go to town manager, and
Yes.
that's what it's had.
Yes.
Milton hasn't done that. Milton is stuck with a town administrator, and I think that's because that they feel that that is step 2 after an executive secretary, and that they thought that was...
And I can tell you, in between there are infinite number of baby steps that you can take in terms of permanently giving power to a town administrator in various aspects. Again, a lot of them requiring town meeting approval and home rule petition to switch the authority permanently from the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen can always give authority to a town administrator, but then has the authority to take it back. Ultimately, the responsibility, unless you change it, rests with the Board of Selectmen. And change it, I mean by change it permanently. If you just give that power to the town administrator, then the responsibility still lies with the Board of Selectmen. So there's a lot of different things you can do, and I think we have to decide that. Anne Maria, perhaps you could at least go out and try and get some job descriptions from some other towns that we could perhaps look at. Maybe reach out to MMA in terms of seeing who's out there for consultants. Maybe even see if MMA's heard of this unsolicited one that we received, and start that process going. I've kind of thought about what what I'd like to see for characteristics. I got about 11 points. I don't know if you want to hear them. I'm sure you have them. My ideal candidate, I guess, would be have a master's degree in public administration or business administration, 10-plus years of government experience in city or town government. Some managerial experience in private enterprise would be helpful. Some knowledge of budgeting and forecasting, proven experience in contract negotiation, working knowledge of Massachusetts municipal finance and accounting laws and regulations, understanding of Massachusetts general laws as they relate to municipalities, working knowledge of labor laws, demonstrated ability to effectively manage people and workflow, demonstrated ability to monitor and control expenditures throughout all town departments, and a team player with the ability to rally support and respect for department heads and other town employees. And ideally, that would be my candidate.
So what's the next step in putting the committee together, search committee?
I think, I guess we've kind of got our, I think the next step is we have to decide how we want to do the search committee. Do we want to go that professional route solely, or do we want some combination, or do we want no professional and just a, so, I mean, I think that's going to require basically a vote from all of us in terms of how we want to proceed with that. And then some kind of a naming if we decide to go, well, either way, either an approval of that professional or a vote to approve a committee. One of the two. And some,
How many people would you expect on this committee?
I don't think the committee should be huge. I would guess 5. Something in that range. 5 to 7 at most, but probably 5. And I would like to see, I would definitely like to see a town administrator from another town in that committee. I would like to see, I thought a tremendous amount about who else, but at least a couple of residents, and some, professionals if we can find them that. That have managerial experience in other areas that, clearly are qualified to look at a town manager. So that would be my thinking in terms of who should be on the committee.
Could we have a request that people write in if they're interested?
There already have been a number of people that have expressed interest, but yes, we could do that.
And would you be opposed to, say, each member of this board recommending 2 people?
We all recommend 2 people to be a pool from which to
be in the pool?
I suppose, sure. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Sound fair, Bob?
Yeah, it sounds fair. I am one who doesn't like committees too big.
Right, that's why I say 5 is probably optimal.
Yeah. I've found that at least committees that I've been on in the past or organizations that I've belonged to, when it becomes too large, you can't get anything done. And I also, still, I do think we maybe, I mentioned the 2 avenues of a committee or a professional, and then you came back and said, well, our combination thereof, that might be something that might, what we want is a structure that best benefits the town.
Right.
And after this whole discussion right now, I'm sort of leaning towards a committee plus a professional. One advantage of a professional is that they're very good at, when you have an awful lot of applicants, you got the right person, they know how to weed right through and screen out who's really not worth considering further.
Right. Yeah, it depends how you use that. I guess you could use the professional as a consultant just for the committee to confer with, and you could use the professional to do the outreach search to get candidates in the door, and then leave it up to the committee to actually do the interview process and the narrowing down and weeding out from that point.
To narrow it down to
The three,
Probably
probably.
three.
probably 3.
Mhm. And then we'd step in when there were 3.
It almost just now sounds like we've just established that process.
But when you take the Consolidated Facilities
Yeah.
Director, I was on that committee. We had 72 applicants. And it was dwindled down to 3, and then we picked from the final 3. It went from 72 down to 3. With a big committee, and then it came to a small committee that interviewed the final 3.
How did the two of you feel, one, each of the selectmen appoint 2 for a committee that would be, what, 7 members? How would we do that?
Well, I guess we're saying that we're all going to put 2 names into a pool amongst other people that, have thrown their name in themselves.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a list of individuals and residents, town residents, that have emailed the office
Yes.
requesting to be on
I've gotten
a
some
search
personally,
committee.
which I forwarded.
How many do you have in?
So at this time, we have 6. So what I can do is, as more come in, I can keep a spreadsheet and forward it out to the 3 of you.
Right. And I guess while we are on TV, we can publicly say that anybody that has some interest in being on that search committee can certainly email the Anne Marie with, and it will be helpful, a resume or some qualifications, so we're able to better make that decision on terms of.
Get a good mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Email address, afagan@townofmilton.org.
There you go. Okay. Did you have any other thoughts in terms of qualifications, or?
Everything you said, Tom, was kind of on my list. I made an extended list. One thing I will be looking for, and it's been a huge issue during this process, is a guy or a gal that can communicate. I want somebody who, because they will be the CEO of the town, $95 million budget, I want somebody who will conduct weekly meetings with department heads. If this was a private enterprise, you'd be having daily meetings, especially if it's a $95 million business. I don't think it's too much to ask for a weekly meeting with every single department head. Give them 10 minutes. So communication will be huge in what I'm looking for. Customer service is another one. I walked around to different departments in Town Hall this week, and I mentioned to one in particular about mission statement. You can walk into any department in this town hall, you won't see a mission statement anywhere. No person from the public will see or will be able to read that the people working here are public servants. They're here to serve the people. And so I'd like a mission statement, created by this new town administrator that's put on every single department, reminding everybody that works here what their job is, and to create some sort of unity, not divide people, but create a unity. That's what I'm looking for in particular, as well as a lot more, but that's my main focus. Communication.
Anything else to add?
Well, I want to be able to, I plan to research different job descriptions for different town administrators, see if I can get ideas from other ones, and I heard yours. I can understand Dennis's concerns, and then I'll give my feedback after I study it.
I think if we do decide to go that professional consultant route, that consultant could be helpful too in terms of pulling together a job description. Could help us in that process. Because I think that should be our process, not a committee's process in terms of a job description.
Yeah. The fellow, Alan Gould from Municipal Resources that contacted you, do you think it would be helpful to us as to say, to contact him and say, send us, you offered additional information?
I think I would first reach out to MMA.
Okay.
And see, because they are our professional organization, and see what they have, you know, see if, number one, they've
That's
ever
probably
heard.
a good point. They also may have advice.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
On a hiring process.
Yes. Yeah, so I think that would be the first place to reach out in terms of the professional help. And then go from there. You know, if they give us a list of names, or then we can interview a few of them, see who we think best fits, and how they might be able to fit into the whole process, and then go from there. Okay, any other comments on the process?
So where do you think we should be in the process by the next meeting?
I think where we should be is to have contacted MMA to get the names of some professional consultants, and then if by the next meeting, if we could also vote on, and I think we probably have pretty much reached consensus, but vote on, do we want that approach, a professional consultant with a local committee, and just vote that.
That's a good idea.
That's the organization we want, and then start to refine it and select that committee as well. So I'm hopeful over the next couple of 3 meetings that we could hopefully have that process somewhat tied down.
That's good.
Okay? Okay. Item number 7 is the October 22nd town meeting. Today is the opening and closing of the warrant. We do have, I believe it's 4 articles that have been, there's 3 of them that are town, 2 selectmen articles, and 1 zoning, planning board article, and 1 citizen petition. And one of the articles came in late, so you have it in your packets here. But essentially, we have in our articles, the first one is, let me see, to deal with, should we need to get town meeting approval for the demolition of the town's portion of the building. Either demolition, I think it's written kind of broadly, either demolition or repair, or, and to see what sum of money they'd raise. But just to give us that, and we may wind up pulling that article if things get resolved, but
Right.
it's there in case we need it,
Okay.
basically. The second article is an article, we had an extra $198,000 left over in terms of revenue, because when the warrant committee, and necessarily, it happens almost every year, when the warrant committee does its numbers, when it does its all-day Saturday meeting, and even by the time we get to town meeting, the actual local aid number has not been set yet. So that revenue number is a guesstimate, an educated guesstimate, but a guesstimate. Usually you have the governor's proposal, you usually have the House's proposal, you don't have the Senate, and you don't have the conference committee proposals. So you're kind of guessing. And what wound up happening is when the final conference committee report came out on local aid, the number that the town of Milton received was about $198,000 more than what the warrant committee estimated for revenue, which means we could do 2 things with it. One of them is do nothing and don't change anything. That $198,000 comes in, it's extra money. It could potentially flow to free cash, assuming there is free cash, and it would be available to be spent in 2014. because October, the October town meeting is before the tax rate is set, we could actually appropriate that $198,000 and make it available to be spent in 2013. And it could be appropriated for any particular department, or it could be appropriated to go into the reserve fund, or it could be appropriated to go into a stabilization fund. So the way the article is written is kind of broadly, and it will be up to the warrant committee to determine where best to recommend that that money be appropriated. The next article is, which one is this?
Sewer
Mr.
system.
Chairman.
Sewer, yes. This was the late one. What happened at town, we've had an article every year at annual town meeting to basically accept is an interest-free loan?
Yes,
From
MWRA.
MWRA for sewer system improvements. The program had ended a couple of years ago. There was just no more funding available for those no-interest loans. We kept the article in, I guess, for a couple of years. It was actually still in this year, but the
Yes.
recommendation was not to approve it or not to
appropriate.
yeah. Not to approve the borrowing motion, because the program didn't really exist. Well, lo and behold, the program came back again. So, so this is a quick, let's get an article in there so that we have the ability to borrow interest-free from MWRA for sewer improvements. So that's all that article really does. And before I get into the citizen petition, because I think are there people? Yeah, Ned's here to probably talk about that if he wants to. I'll give him a couple of minutes. The zoning, the planning board's article is on a potential change in zoning to allow an assisted living residence development in a residential neighborhood, and that being off of Randolph Ave, where the old horse farm is on the dump access road. And that article really is that actually an overlay? Bill, that's an overlay, right? So that would be an overlay zoning article. And then finally, we have and we do have people here to talk about, but the last one is a citizen's petition, which we have enough signatures for a zoning change, and again, an overlay for a landscaping / residential development. And that's as much as I'm going to say. I'll invite Ned up if he wants to just say a couple of words about what this is about. And I don't think we have to get too lengthy on it, but
No, just very briefly,
Yeah.
Ned Corcoran. I am resident 70 Morton Road in Milton. I'm an attorney, and I am representing Tom Coulter, who operates Coulter Landscaping at 919 Blue Hill Avenue. In Milton, it is essentially next door to the town's fire station on Blue Hill Avenue. And Mr. Coulter has lived at that location since 1991. He's operated a landscaping business at that location. The location has historically been permitted for certain components of commercial business, a nursery, sale of Christmas trees, and fruits and vegetables and things. That's allowed under special permits that have pre-existed his purchase of the property. But since then, he's operated also a landscaping business from that location. Was granted a variance for that, to that effect a couple of years ago by the Board of Appeals when the son of the woman who lived next door to him for a number of years requested the building commissioner to enforce, to question whether he had a right to operate that location. The Board of Appeals granted a variance with the significant support of almost all but the son of the woman who lived next door. All of the other neighbors and abutters have been strongly in support of the operation. He's clean, he's neat, he's respectful of his neighbors. Unfortunately, the next door, the non-resident abutter, as I'll call him, the house is vacant. The woman has moved to Pennsylvania, is in a nursing home, and so there's no one living in this house next door. He challenged the grant of the variance in the land court. And the land court overturned the Board of Appeals' decision to grant the variance this past May. I was retained by Mr. Coulter in June, filed an appeal on his behalf to the appeals court. But essentially what we're asking for is the town meeting to recognize through a special permit process that would be limited in scope to the operation of a business, provided that you also live in the residence on the property, a special permit to allow that business to essentially to recognize sort of a grandfathering of that business as it's existed for the last 20 years. All of the home rule petition was signed by most of his immediate neighbors. I was particularly struck at a hearing at the Board of Appeals 2 weeks ago with how articulate and how strongly his neighbors supported his operation. Essentially, it is a special permit that would be in place for as long as both of those conditions are met. It is not a change in zoning. It would be the imposition of an overlay over the property, and would allow the planning board to grant a special permit with conditions that are identified in the zoning article itself, and that if either the owner of the business ceased to reside in the premises or ceased to operate the business, then the special permit would lapse, and the underlying zoning, Residence A, would remain in effect. The alternative, obviously, is we will pursue our opportunities with the Board of Appeals, but that's an iffy proposition. And so we'll be asking town meeting on behalf of the 10 citizens who signed the petition to support this article. I appreciate your opportunity and your time.
Can I ask?
Sure.
If you're successful at the appeals court, is there any need for this article?
There would not be, because the variance would then trigger it. I think at best it's 50-50, and the appeals court probably will not render a decision until sometime a year from now. And so there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in play here with respect to Mr. Coulter and his ability to remain viable in business at that location.
And while the appeal is going on, he's allowed to operate?
He is allowed to operate. We were before the Board of Appeals a couple of weeks ago. The neighbor moved the Board of Appeals to enforce the decision of the land court. I was able to prevail on the Board of Appeals that the appeal of the decision of the land court acted to stay the decision of the land court. That is, it's under appeal, so therefore it cannot be enforced until the appeal has been heard. It was a close argument on some legal issues with respect to that. And it was at that discussion that I first met and heard from a number of the abutters who were extremely strong and strident and eloquent in their support for Mr. Coulter's ability to continue his business as long as he was living in the property.
But again, if you are, is the court coming up soon, or?
No.
It's not next year?
I would say it's, we haven't received the briefing schedule.
Okay.
There's a lot of process in the court that hasn't taken place.
So town meeting will come before your appeal?
Significantly before.
Any other questions?
No, I have a comment. I've known Tom Coulter for a number of years. Tom grew up in town, and I'm glad that Tom does business in town, because we don't have enough business. And I'm impressed with the fact that he has the neighbors' support, and, you know, with every rule, I think sometimes you make exceptions, and this, to me, seems like a case for a good exception. He's been operating there for 20-plus years, and he's promised to live in the residence. Those seem like agreeable terms to me.
Okay, thank you, Ned.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, on this motion, I am going to have to recuse myself on this particular article because I am in a butter. So, so as we vote it, I would just recuse myself on the vote on, or maybe we should just take two separate votes.
It's one vote, so we can break it out
Break it
into
out.
two separate.
Yes. So then we could do one motion saying to approve the following articles submitted Board of Selectmen Town Meeting, an article to provide appropriation for demolition town-owned portion of 131 Elliott Street, an article to appropriate and determine the use of state monies in excess of the amount previously estimated by the town, an article to see what sum of money the town will vote to appropriate to provide capital needs for the town sewer system, and an article submitted by the Planning Board to amend the zoning bylaws by adding a new subsection to Section 3 regarding assisted living residence development. And I won't say to close the warrant.
No.
So that would be the first motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion?
But just in terms of, one is for the demolition of the town-owned portion.
Yes.
It's not direct, these comments aren't directly connected, but they're still connected. Senator Joyce was recently here and commented to us that we may wish to seek some sort of state grant monies that we would use
For the public
to
amenities.
accomplish the demolition of the property and then have it, that existing portion, stay as green space to help basically the neighbors, and then it would also help Mr. Conley in terms of getting his bonus. And I guess what I'm saying is...
I think the practical matter we have is the fact that the building is condemned.
Yes, but what I'm
And-
saying now is, should we also pursue that avenue?
I think we should pursue anything we can, anything and everything, but I think we need the article here just to have a way of appropriating the
Yeah,
money.
but I'm just throwing
If
it
we
out
need
in
it.
in case we can use state money instead of Milton money to demo the building.
Oh, that's always available to us. I mean, you know, and generally in these articles, it's, you have to accept, you know, state grants or whatever, you know, to offset the appropriation. So that's generally, you know, within the article. But what was I going to say? All this is really doing is just giving us a mechanism to go to. It may get pulled. You know,
Okay.
we may not need it, but you know, we have to have something in place today. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, Dennis, the second motion will be the same, to approve the following, and then just read the...
Where?
So if you start up from here, this paragraph right here,
Yeah.
to approve, and then the only thing you would read is the
Citizens'
petition.
petitions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to close the warrant.
Hmm?
And to
clo-
close-
yeah, and
and
the
to
final,
close the
and to
warrant.
close the warrant.
Okay.
You're going to read that, and then that, and that.
So make a motion to approve the following article submitted by the Board of Selectmen to the October town meeting. Citizens petition for overlay zoning for a landscaping residential planned unit development, and to close the warrant.
Okay, and that was a motion?
That's the motion.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Unanimous? I mean, aye.
It's unanimous.
One abstention, well, one abstention, was there one abstention?
No, I recused,
Recuse.
because I'm the butter.
Okay, so that's not an abstention.
I'm not here.
0-1, he
I'm
abstained.
not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
201, with Mr. Hurley abstaining from the vote.
You abstained?
Okay, number 8 on the agenda is the planning director update. Why don't you come on up, Bill, and get us up to date.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
I think I gave you 4 things that I had to do for this meeting. One of them is the all hazards plan, the hazard mitigation plan. Basically what this is a renewal of an existing document. It's federally required to be renewed every 5 years. I wrote the first one, I think, 8 years ago when I worked for Metropolitan Area Planning Council. It has since expired. The town needs this in order to be eligible for state and federal funding for different hazard mitigation issues or opportunities. Mitigation is something different than just we have a storm and there's money available for that storm. Mitigation funds are, it's pre-disaster. It's you attempt to plan in advance for a storm, you make something so that it is storm-proof. It's a lot cheaper to make something storm-proof than it is to pay for it afterwards and have to replicate the whole thing. The plan itself was put together, again, with the help of Metropolitan Area Planning Council and input from the town's local emergency planning committee. There was a lot of work between our fire department, the DPW, the police department, and myself. That plan is before you. We're looking for an approval of the document. The document is actually, it's a living, evolving document. So though you may see a project in there, we may need to take and stick a new one in next week. One of the funding pieces in here right now, and one of the reasons we hope to get it signed sooner, not later, is there is a sewer pump that's needed down at Unquity House. The MWRA line that cuts through there surcharges, and we need a new pump there. FEMA's already approved it, the state's already approved it, and FEMA is waiting for an approval of this plan by the town in order to do that funding. It's already in the queue, we're just holding. Next issue that I have here is Beacon Integrated Strategies. It's for a 1-year contract for professional services to assist the town with the necessary contracts required for the wind turbine project. Contracts such as the construction/erection company's dealings, the electrical engineering contracts, assistance with the NSTAR interconnection issues, issues with Hyundai with the purchase as it relates to the issues of construction, transportation, interconnection with NSTAR, going back to the electrical interconnections. That's it.
And that's all done by the consulting contract?
It's done in concert with, I mean, we're at the table. We as a town are sitting at the table. It historically has been Kevin, Rich Kleiman, and myself representing the town. Kevin winds up coming back and telling you where the next set of contracts was. Beacon's in there to take and push NSTAR, to push the electrical engineer. The electrical interconnections here are really in-depth, and with Beacon, we have a series of consultants who can address the intricacies of the electrical engineering interconnect. When our construction company does a plan, we have to take that plan and give it back to our electrical engineer. We don't have that in town, but Beacon has a person that works with us on that. He takes and reviews it, he calls us, and he'll sit here with us or conference call with us so that we know the nuances of what it is that we're saying yea or nay to. What do you think?
Take your word for it.
Yep.
As for the overlay districts, I think you already addressed those, but I was ready to answer questions you had on those if you
Right.
have them.
Yeah,
An overlay is not removing what's underneath. It's just a tablecloth that goes over. It's an additional layer of zoning. There's an existing house on the property. The business wants to sell it and it wants to revert back to a house, not a problem. It's always there. This is just an extra layer that allows for
the operation of something
the
different.
operation of something that you're making site-specific. Horseplay, that would be a 90-unit, as proposed as a 90-unit structure. And when we approve that zoning, that group will then come back to this board because there is direction being given them by the planning board that the entrance to this should be the access road to the old landfill. Because of the safety concerns, it is an existing road, it has a light, it's a public way, and they need to come to you to have that discussion because even though it's a roadway owned by the town, it's not open to the public at this point.
Right, so we'd have to declare it a public way.
We will come back and have that discussion.
Town meeting have to declare that a public way, or is it just the board? I'm not,
I think I have to go back and do some more research
yeah,
on that particular point.
because I know we have had articles before town meeting to declare
Roadways acceptable to the town,
town,
yes.
yeah.
I'm not sure how that one is, I'm not sure how it's listed,
Okay,
but I'll find out.
okay.
Is the position of the proposed developer still that they are not agreeable to the access road, that instead they wish to make their own entry off of Randolph Ave?
No, they've changed their mind.
Change their mind?
They have, they're being pushed pretty hard by the planning board to use the access road. Taking and putting another road between Reedsdale Road and Reed Street and having people come and go. If I'm coming from Tedeschi's down in that direction, I'm taking a left. Try to do that at 8 to 9 in the morning. It is probably an impossibility. Take the same thing and try to take a left out of that site, 8 to 9 in the morning. You can't do it. Try to take the same left at 3 to 5 in the afternoon, and some pretty unhappy people behind you. It's not the safest of place to take and put another roadway that close between the lights. It is the feeling of the planning board that you have a light down there now, use it, and it will also help slow some of that traffic down that's on that roadway and goes a little too fast now.
And that still would be a special permit ultimately?
Yes.
If issued with
Yep.
a 4/5.
But this also helps, it should help the developer too with their drainage, because the drainage in that area is going towards the roadway. They will now have to create drainage that's working in conjunction with that roadway. So they'll be back before you with a whole set of plans and asking for permission, and we'll have that discussion.
And will that be connected to sewerage down there, or?
Yes.
It will, okay.
Yes. Public sewer, public water.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about what happened today in East Milton?
I can. Senator Joyce called yesterday and asked if we could meet, if I could meet him down in the square. He was going to be meeting with some of the business owners down there. And he was bringing with him Secretary of Transportation Rich Davies. Senator Joyce and Secretary Davies were there this morning. They toured the square. They looked at several different places. They had already been to Central Ave Business District. They had already been to one of the other sites in the transportation bond was Blue Hill Parkway from Elliott Street down. They looked at that intersection. They're hoping that we might look at putting Mass Works on that particular site with the transportation bond. Secretary Davies was there this morning because of the extra $1 million that was put into the transportation bond for the East Milton deck project. And this looks at a parking lot, a deck, the traffic patterns down there, and it's Secretary Davies was he liked the I think he liked the comments that he was getting. He was open to what could potentially happen. I should state that, Selectman Cohen was there too. I was actually down at the rink doing a concession site walk, so I wound up running a little bit late, but he filled in admirably. There was a discussion with the business owners, some of the residents. I know that Pat Desmond was there, and I know that Paul Hogan, who's representing the business owners in their push to have something done on the deck area, was there. We looked at the potential for surplusing the part of the park and ride or all of the park and ride down on Granite Ave. And we looked at potentially using Mass Works for the upcoming project that Chief Wells will be discussing with you.
Okay. I did talk to Paul Midori today, this afternoon, and about what occurred, and what I'm going to do is on our next meeting have a discussion about, and I want to have Brian Joyce here if I can too. I mean, extremely grateful for $1 million. Never going to look $1 million in the face. It's great. I don't think this board really knew anything about it. The legislation it just happened, which kind of is, I don't know why, but would have been nice to have a little heads up that, hey, I'm going to try and get you $1 million. But for whatever reason, we weren't informed. But that aside, I'd like to have Brian here just to explain, what the legislation is and does, and then have a discussion about the wayfaring. I think there's a lot of that stuff we can start now, and we should get started. So I want to have that discussion next meeting.
No matter what we do, because it's in the transportation bond, it has to be approved by Mass Highway.
Yep.
Because Secretary Davies is over Mass Highway, that was a good thing for having him here today. He understands it. He's going back. He's going back and talk to his people. The East Milton parking study was done under the management guise of Mass Highway. So the same people who will be reviewing the $1 million project are the same people who were looking at the project as we did it, yes, for the federal money. Mm-hmm. The good thing about our money is the transportation bond doesn't have to go to the tip. The federal money that we have has to go to the tip, but we don't have to wait in line for that money. If this was just a TIP project brought forth by the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, if it was just brought in and put onto the list, then we have to wait, and everybody jockeys for that money.
Yep.
Our money for East Milton is a federal high priority It's an earmark. That money is sitting there, it's waiting to be used. We have to go back to the MPO, put it on the tip, they will vote it to come out. But again, it goes through Mass Highway, it goes through the MPO. I'm not sure that we're going through the MPO for the transportation bond, but we are definitely going through Mass Highway. So we have to have Mass Highways okay and blessing on that project.
I guess that's the conversation I'd like to have next meeting, is just what that process is, how quickly we can get moving on whatever paperwork we have to put in place to get.
That's something that we could actually bring one of the project managers from Mass Highway to answer those particular questions. I can ask if he can attend, but worst case, I can have his answers for you.
Okay.
I just am pleased that you mentioned that. It's been a long-standing concern down in East Milton Square that the two issues are traffic flow and parking. And I think it's time we get something done. And again, and I've commented before in the past, we're so very fortunate that we're not talking about really spending our money down there for the improvements. And now we've got 1.6 in federal funds and another $1 million in state funds. This to me is a no-brainer to make your improvements on the deck, add your additional parking. We're trying to straighten out the traffic flow. We've got a better cycling process. And at the same time, as Senator Joyce mentioned it at the last meeting, he's talking about 40% greenery, and we just need to be very sure that we do nothing but enhance the name of any person, such as Representative Manning or the other different memorials. I think we can even improve upon the way we're honoring those people down there. As I've mentioned before, the Manning plaque lies horizontally. It should be brought up vertically. You should have a flag, flowers, etc. So to me, this is a win-win for everybody that has anything to do with East Milton Square, be they business people, be they customers, be they residents. The time is here. Let's seize it.
Right.
I do want to caution, let's be a little careful. It's just not on the agenda, so it's just really an informative discussion, or not even a discussion, it's just information purposes. But we will bring all this up at the next meeting. Okay, we have a couple of votes to be taken here. The first one being a motion to approve the Town of Milton Hazardous Mitigation Plan, which was created by MAPC with input from Milton Local Hazard Mitigation Planning Committee, which will enable the town to be eligible to receive FEMA funding for hazard mitigation grants and to recommit to update this plan in 5-year intervals.
Second motion.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The second one is to approve a contract between the town and Beacon Integrated Solutions, LLC, for consulting services regarding the construction of the wind turbine for the period from July 1, 2012 through June 30, 2013.
Second that motion.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Bill.
Can I just tell you, on that hazard mitigation plan, not this last March, but the March before, when we had the heavy rains,
Yep.
we lost pieces down in Garden Street and a few other places. Because we had this plan in place, we were eligible for extra funding from FEMA, and it's because of this plan. And we've since...
Have you done any mitigation down there before that, or?
Not in that particular area, but we've done it in several other places in town.
Okay.
But because of that one, we did do projects with this other money.
Mm-hmm. Great. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, number 9 on the agenda is a Traffic Commission recommendation. And Richard, do you want to come up and meet with us?
Good
How
evening.
you doing? And as I understand, we're here basically just to talk about the Brush Hill Road and the Ponce Valley Parkway intersection.
Right.
Okay. And why don't you explain what the commission's recommendation was and the reason for it?
We received a request in June
From the select?
From this board, if we
Yes.
could meet relative to the ongoing issue that we've been dealing with, which involves the intersection of the Ponset Valley Parkway and Brush Hill Road. You presented us with a plan that was, you wanted some input from us on a plan that was, I believe this was designed by John Thompson, the Assistant Town Engineer.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So we did meet on July 18th, and there were two issues that we discussed. The first one was that we had already taken, the commission had already taken a prior vote to request both DCR, which is, and Mass DOT, or Mass Highway, who oversees the Ponset Valley being a state road, to weigh in and give us their concerns or their ideas of what they thought about this intersection. I'll be the first one to tell you that this is not my expertise. I'm the police chief, I'm not an engineer, and among the Traffic Commission, two experts when it comes to, you know, roadway layout, construction design, those things are both Joe Lynch, your DPW director, and John Thompson, our engineer. So after I received your request, I was made aware by the DPW, Mr. Lynch, that that report had in fact come back and been delivered to the town by Mass Highway, and it existed, and it was brought, it's here now, I believe you all have it, and it was brought forth to us at that meeting, the 18th. So clearly, their ideas were much different than this.
Their ideas deal with the whole
Their ideas deal with the
section,
whole
not just that
section.
intersection.
And one of the things, that I didn't see citizens speak tonight, but I know there were issues spoken to about this, and I know representatives from Fuller Valley, I know that I've met many times with the representatives from the neighborhood, and I know that anytime that we make recommendations to you, and you, in many cases, you make changes relative to the layout of the streets, and this, it has an effect to it. And we understand that, and I've spoken many times just about how the infrastructure of our streets today were designed for, you know, horses, wagons, a couple of cars in a house, and this intersection is no different than that.
Right.
So CTS had two plans. We discussed them openly, but there were a lot of people present, and our feeling was that we would put this up on the town's website, which is where it is now. It's also on the Milton Police Department website, and allow for 30 days of comment from the citizens. And that is where we are with that.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead.
In terms of that plan, since it involves DCR property,
Right.
more so than Town of Milton
Absolutely,
property,
yes.
who is going to go forward with that plan? Should it go through? And what is their idea in terms of timing?
This is, and I'm only giving you my own thought, and I've thought about this, because you're
These
correct.
poor people have been waiting
I know they
years.
have. I know they have. I know. And the Ponset Valley Parkway, it's just like Blue Hills Parkway and some, 28, are roads that, as a traffic commission, we have no authority on. So my thought as chair is three things now, is to allow the citizens to weigh in, to set an agenda for our next meeting, invite this group to come as well, to hear their thoughts, and to also ask them how, if we were to recommend to you a change of any type at this intersection, how they, because it's their state highway, how they would want to see it proceed or take place. The last thing that I want to say is that, and Mr. Sweeney knows this well because we've been dealing with Governor's Road for 2 years now, and we've tried change after, it's an ongoing issue, and part of the problem there is it's because it's a street in two communities, and not one community cannot override the other without both agreeing. I think part of my obligation to you, to this board as chair of the Traffic Commission, is to try and bring both sides together here and find some harmony.
John Thompson's plan is not significantly different.
No,
than-
but it's more,
a
John's
little
wasn't
different.
really, and
and
John.
It's not it's drawing to scale or anything.
Yes,
but-
exactly right. And John was very upfront in that this was not, what we received from you was not to scale, and he wasn't comfortable recommending. And I was actually happy that we had some input, some response back from the request we had made several months ago. So my formal recommendation to you tonight would be that we not pursue the conceptual plan as presented to you by us, and as we voted in that meeting, to not pursue that, and that we keep this open for 30 days. We'll take any input from residents, and we will host a meeting in September, at which point We will openly discuss it. I think they need to be here. I think DCR needs to be there. I really do. I've sat up there every week now for a month. And I will be honest, I have my own, I've not publicized my ideas, but I have my own ideas, but again, I'm not a traffic engineer. And one of the things I learned quickly as chief 4 years ago is that we received so many requests, sign here, paint this, do this. For every action, there's a reaction. And this is clearly an issue that whatever the action is, there'll be a reaction. I know that the city of Boston has an interest. I've met with Representative Scotch on this previously. So I think this is a logical step for us to take now. We have a document. I don't know, none of us know how they came, really, we have not heard from them face to face and what made them bring this, how they came to this conclusion. One of them we don't like. There did not seem to be any consensus among any of the commission members that liked the Rotary at all.
Yeah. And actually, I've seen so many of them work.
Yeah.
Drive through the town of Norfolk.
It's working in East Milton.
Yeah, it's working in East Milton.
It's working in East Milton.
Drive through 115, there's 2 of them in the town of Norfolk that work wonderful. And they look beautiful. They look beautiful.
You may be right. And I'm just going on the thought of...
This morning I came through that intersection. Somebody came from the Boston side of Neponset Valley Parkway up Milton Street, probably doing 70 miles an hour.
I believe it.
I mean, because there's nothing, there's no stop sign, there's no nothing. He just blew through that intersection. If anybody was coming from Brush Hill Road, they were dead.
And I will give you this tonight, and I think the world of Roxanne, and I've known Deborah as well for many years. I've sat, the one thing about all this that I don't like, and that does seem dangerous to me, just as a police officer, not as an engineer, is that coming out of Brush Hill Road, attempting to cross Neponset Valley, either from having the scenario you just described, or a car coming from the 138 side, it doesn't look safe to me. It has that feeling of this potential here. And I'm not an engineer, and you may be right. When Mass Highway talks to us about why they come up with the rotary concept, perhaps I'm sure it has merit as to the reason why they did that. But I would ask tonight if you would allow us to take input for 30 days. We'll then convey a meeting. We'll invite DCR and Mass Highway, and we'll report back to you one way or the other. We have to do something on this. We have to move this. We can't just. We've been discussing this now for 2 years.
I'll throw it up into the board. I personally don't have a problem waiting 30 days, but I don't want this to be I would prefer it not to be, another 5 years in the making.
But I just want to be clear that, Tom, you spoke about coming off Neponset Valley Parkway and up Milton Street.
Yes.
And you're talking about the Rotary. We're talking about the intersection of Brush Hill Road and Neponset Valley Parkway. That's what we're here tonight for, right?
Yes, but the whole plan is the whole DCR plan deals with the Rotary and...
They looked at the whole
I understand
thing,
that,
right?
but for now, we're just talking about the intersection of Brush Hill Road and Neponset Valley Parkway, right?
Yes, which one are you giving me? You can come up there.
Yeah, come on up.
If I invite
I know where it came from. I asked CTPS to go and study the intersection. CTPS actually works for the
Mass
MPO.
Highway.
They also work with Mass Highway. What CTPS, and they are traffic engineers, so when we tell them that we need a traffic study done, this is who the state has their stuff done by.
Yep.
There are 2 alternatives in this.
Yep.
In your packet is the electronic version of it, because we can't see it because it's in, we have it printed in black and white, you've got it in color. If you look at diagram number 2, which should be...
I don't think you have it.
You didn't give them the whole thing?
No,
Okay.
all we got was
It's on page 5 of the document.
John Tompkins.
It is online when you go home tonight
Yeah.
to look at it.
It's on the town's
And it was
front
emailed.
page, over on the right where it says current projects, it's in that current projects piece. It's on the police department's homepage, the same document, the whole document. The document has in
It
it
was emailed out.
the turning numbers, it has the crash data, and here it comes in color.
You selling it? How much
It is page 5. There were 2 different scenario,
I have a colored one, too.
alternatives. One of them was the Rotary. There are numbers involved with it for construction. It does discuss the whole thing. It did take into account John Thompson's plan, which is the very back page of the document. There are Appendix A through E, and E was the town's plan done by John. It is comprehensive to the point that it was discussed with Joe Lynch and John Thompson. If there's something wrong with it, it's that the final document is missing some of Joe's final edits. Didn't make it to the final document, but they would get picked up in construction. The hows and the whys are in the document itself.
Can I answer your question? So you asked a question about, it is true that what, the conceptual plan that was presented to us really dealt primarily with the intersection of Brush Hill Road and Neponset Valley. CTPS, when they did present this back to us, expanded somewhat on it. But that's understandable because, as I said, for every action, there's a reaction, so they clearly looked at it in a bigger picture than what we asked them to do. And I think that's how this report wound up back here with us.
Has any study been done on that intersection? Because it seems to me there's not much of a change being proposed here, but I think it'll make a huge difference in the elderly's lives. And I know I have two daughters that are driving now, and they've almost had head-on collisions right there at that intersection. So I'm a huge advocate for doing something right there. But what is the next step? How do we, who do you want at this meeting?
Can I actually answer your question first?
Yeah.
A lot of the crash data isn't there. The only crash data that gets reported is when the police respond. If there's an accident and nobody calls the police, that crash data does not get entered. When my daughter had her head-on collision, there was no police response because the person who called it in, when they said, can the car be driven, she's sitting in the car, and they said, yeah. Well, the car couldn't. The front's in the engine, and the engine is stopped. It had to be towed, so therefore the police should have responded. When I went down and went to the police and said, why didn't you? Their comment was, they never got it. It went to the state police. The state police asked the question, is this, do they have to be towed? Was somebody hurt? No and no. Good, we're not going. And they didn't do anything with it. When I showed the data, that there are accidents there, that they don't get reported. It's like a fender bender. Before the police get there.
But here's the sad part about it.
They don't make it into this report.
The minute somebody gets killed there,
I agree.
then there'll be a change.
I agree.
Well, that's why they collected as best information as they could. They did sit there. There are counts. They did put out, they counted the cars going by, and this is their best. This is their answer to this.
I agree with you, and this goes back to what I've said, seeing that, and I want to address two issues, is that A, as Mr. Hurley said, I don't want to drag this out any longer than we have to. If we're going to affect change, let's try and get to the correct answer and do what's best for the community and the neighborhood. And two is, I think we need to hear from them so we can answer the questions that you're going to ask us. What did they say? How do they pick up? Which do they favor one versus the other? How do they come up with the Rotary idea? What would be the benefits for our community of one over the other? And I understand too.
And secondly, the funding of it, when's it going to be done?
Exactly right.
All those questions. And then I guess the follow-on question is, right now, the only thing we're concerned about, like Dennis said, is that intersection, or the only thing we're really talking about is the intersection of Brush Hill and the Neponset Valley Parkway and squaring that off. If they can decide on a version of this, can we just take that portion of their version of that and do it?
I asked that same question to Joe
Depends
Lynch.
who's paying for it. If we're paying for it, yes, we can. If we decide to take and use MassWorks money to take and fund this, yes, we can.
And that's new, because in my discussions with Kevin Murray prior, everything was that it looked like we
We were
would
going
be-
to pay.
we were
for
going
the
to have to
bill.
pay.
Now, MassWorks is going
As
to,
I understand, we would have to pay. This is, I've never heard this before today about the
I had this
Mass.
discussion with Brian and the secretary this morning.
okay. And there is some funding available, or there could be some funding available for it.
This kind of project could be funded under MassWorks.
Okay. Then the following question is, how long is it going to take to get that through? And you don't know the answer to that, I know.
And- right.
That's where we need Senator Joyce.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we could also put, if we get Brian here next meeting, maybe we could put that on the agenda to just get more information in terms of the funding aspect of that, and wait the 30 days for, I mean,
I would agree to, 30 days is, I mean, you've waited how many years?
Well, the vote that we took when we sent it to CTPS was July of 2011. That's when we took that vote, to send this to them, asking them to weigh in on this and to get back to us.
but this whole issue has been going on for many more years than that.
Yes, and as I say, going back to just standing there and watching, you're talking about infrastructure, Brush Hill being a really rural road in this town, but it gets a lot of traffic.
Yep.
You're talking Milton Healthcare, that was a seminary, with a passive field that was pretty, that is now used nearly every night, if not every weekend.
Yep.
You're talking another section of our community that abuts right against the city of Boston, and the daily commute that takes place with that over a bridge that hasn't changed in
Right.
200 some odd years.
That's why I bring up the Route 115 in Norfolk, where they did put actually 2 rotaries in, going right into Norfolk Center. And that is a major cut-through, and it is a rural road coming up into it. It's almost the same characteristics as, because it's a 5-way intersection, and another 5-way intersection right before it.
You talk to Mr. Lynch, he'll tell you there's one in Andover that does the same kind of deal.
Yeah, and it works. The
Duxbury
traffic
has
flows.
one, and they do work, but it is it's a mindset that we think Rotary, we
Right.
think.
The old,
True.
the old road.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
where we stop, as soon as we think of the
Right.
Cape. No,
You see a governor removing a rotary, or moving rotaries, and so, in your mind, you think, and
Yeah.
I'd be the first to, when we tried this temporary, I had no idea what would happen.
Right, no, I don't think any of us really did.
We had talked about an hour, we thought about it initially, maybe only lasting for an hour or a day, and
We tried the square. When we first tried the square, we had 4 policemen ready to
yeah.
Take everything down?
put everything up. They were ready to take it down. And 2 of them left in the first 4 hours. Why are we here? And the other 2 left shortly thereafter,
Right.
and they weren't needed. This plan itself has already gone to DCR. It's already gone to Mass
Mass
Highway. Mass Highway somebody at Mass Highway has already seen it. We haven't heard comments back on it, but
Yep.
that's up to us to take and push it.
Okay. But I guess the point is, we've gotten 3 different plans now. Our plan, a DCR plan, and this other plan, that are all basically
And-
the
and
same
The man who did
conceptual plan.
DCR is gone. So, but his plan can be incorporated into
Right.
this.
So
But I guess that they all seem to think that change is needed, is the point.
you don't have to stand there for very long, just walk around the whole area, and whether it's on the Milton Street side, the Brush Hill Road side, the Neponset Valley side, if you just look at it, the signage and the layout just isn't what is required in the year 2012 for what we deal with every day in traffic.
Right.
I did a site visit there a few years ago, and when I was on foot, I could definitely recognize a concern for safety at that intersection.
I agree.
And that's now a couple of years ago. I think your suggestion of, hosting the traffic meeting, and ideally, and hopefully it's not wishing too much, but if there's a concern and there's proposed solutions, couldn't we have agreement amongst all parties as to what is a good remedy for dealing with an issue of safety in that area? That's what
I
I'd
hope.
like.
That's
I
what I
think
would like as
funding-
well, I think.
is one of those big issues.
now-
Everybody's going, I don't have any money. If you talk to Mass Highway, they don't want to do it because they don't have any money. You talk to DCR, well, DCR absolutely doesn't have any money.
But
And
didn't
you
you
talk
say?
to us, we don't have any money. But now we get Mass Works,
Who's got the-
maybe we can
Yeah.
find a way to fund it.
And I don't know, do you know, I just heard this tonight, I don't even know what the dollar amount they would have available is.
I would say
And
the
I think that's a
whole
good question for
project
you.
is probably a decent sum.
But for-
There's a number in here, but it's staggering to me, but.
Right, but for what
Not
we're
ready for
talking
that.
about tonight, I mean, it's just an island, right? We're talking just an island?
Well, you're still talking, if you were to do with just
Take
the intersection.
alternative two and just do the Brush Hill Road around the field section.
You got to take some of the field.
You gotta
Yes.
take some of the field, yeah.
Right.
You have to take some of the field.
But at the same time, it can increase parking, and the increased parking is not on that plan.
You can increase parking where?
Can-
We,
for the
we,
field.
yeah, we feel we
For
can
that
increase
field.
parking for the field. They didn't address parking, because they
That's not their
don't
job.
even know what the field is. That's just a piece of green space to them. But we felt, looking at it and understanding the use of the field, we felt that we could perhaps increase parking of the field and make it safer than it is now, because right now it's mostly right along Brush Hill. Once they fill up, it's all along Brush Hill Road. There's no crosswalks there, it's just, we think we could make it safer as
It's
well.
expanding that little DCR lot.
It's a treacherous place. I mean, I live right there.
Yep.
I travel it every day. My 2 teenage daughters drive it every day. I told you that today.
Yep.
And it's only a matter of time before there's going to be a fatality there.
Mm.
I've had the daughter within the fatality there. so
And you
I-
have
I
400
know what you're talking
seniors
about.
living in Fuller Village that have to maneuver there every day.
Right.
I'm an experienced driver. I got problems at that intersection. I don't know how they maneuver around there.
And
So-
if you look at the, for all of your neighbors and for them, if you look at like their support infrastructure, you just got a brand new Stop and Shop on Truman Highway, that's the place you're
Right.
gonna go to, your bank is there, your drugstore's there, so it's,
But I would agree that, every neighbor will have to be brought into this. The Brush Hill Road Neighborhood Association, there's a Reedville Association, Fuller Village, we'll have to get the input. Is that what you're expecting in 30 days?
we do. I'm sure we'll
I
get a
like
lot
that
of
you
input.
do.
I do, I'm a chair, I do, but I'm sure we will
That
not.
Mass Grants one is me, the rest is you.
But I think it's real important when we do have this meeting, that we just focus on this particular
Yes.
intersection, not the whole thing.
Okay. So I guess we have a formal recommendation, I think that you'd have to vote on. that
Yes,
we did
yeah,
make,
we
based
do.
on what we received from you.
So we do need a motion, I guess, to accept the Traffic
motion here?
Commission's recommendation. We don't really have a motion per
Okay.
se, I don't think, do we?
It's in the
Right.
body of the, it's in the body of the letter.
So a motion not to pursue the conceptual plan submitted by the Board of Selectmen at this time. Yeah, I mean, you can flesh it out by saying, 30-day.
Be revisited in 30 days? It's
Yeah.
the same traffic plan?
No, it would be a different traffic plan, so.
And we'll post the meeting, our meeting, like, right, as soon as the 30 days, we'll meet almost immediately afterwards. We may actually have back-to-back traffic commission meetings, Mr. Sweeney.
Motion be-
So why does the motion just say not to pursue the conceptual plan submitted by the board at this time, and to revisit alternatives within a 30-day period?
Second motion.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Any discussion?
So does that mean that this actual plan
The John
Is-
Thompson plan is off the table.
is off the table?
That's what it means.
But at the meeting, we're going to be discussing just this intersection, Brush Hill Road and the Ponza Valley Parkway.
Well, that's, again, I think we need more information at our next meeting in terms of funding. If we're going to accept funding, my guess is we're not going to be able to accept funding just for that little piece. But I don't know that.
I think, too, we have to listen. What you are correct in the fact that the Ponce Valley Parkway is a state road. I think we have to hear them out on their concerns and their ideas regarding their road. I just think
DCR,
Yeah, I think we have to.
Yep.
They may have to be, DCR and Mass Highway will most likely have to be partners with us in that particular portion of the grant.
Yep.
If they say no, then it may be that we just take that portion that you're talking about.
And apply for
And
funding.
apply for it for that particular piece.
Right. And I guess we have to know
We
that.
should be able to know that one, that should be an easier decision than trying to get somebody from DCR or Mass Highway to say, oh yeah, we're going to a meeting in September. If they both turn and balk at something like that, well, then we'll take and pull out the piece for the intersection of Brush Hill Road by the field and Ponce Valley Parkway and put it forward as the project to be
Standalone.
funded.
It's a standalone
Yeah.
project.
You see, I think it's going to be impossible to, not impossible, but it's going to be a lot of work to try and push the whole thing through.
I agree.
I think you're better
Which is
off
why
just
I'm
doing it
saying,
piecemeal.
I think that it is piecemeal, but we ask them for the whole pie, and if they won't give it to us, we'll create our own and move to the smaller piece.
But I think by going for the whole pie, you're just going to get everybody,
You might be right, and
you're going to
I
get everybody riled up.
Well, I think some of it's DCR's call too, because even if we go for just that little piece, we still need DCR approval because we're changing the Ponce Valley Parkway too. So if they say no, we're dead in the water, regardless.
we did-
But are we even touching the Ponce Valley Parkway?
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely, we, listen, I'm not.
This is like a curb cut.
Yeah, there's I don't think we can do anything
moving
here
the
without
curb cut.
DCR approving it.
So if they
Whether we're
say,
paying for it or not.
so if they come back and say, no, it's one project and it's one project only and you can't do it, then we're dead in the water.
Right.
It's a curb cut on their road.
And I do agree that it's probably better, even if they do give us a big picture, to piecemeal this one step at a time, if we can do that. Because there's just, I think the potential here is that the whole thing just gets caught and, as you said, we do nothing, and I don't want that to happen.
Right, right. So hopefully they will be amenable to that and we can do that. And
So you're directing me to take and do the piecemeal, fix this intersection first?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yes,
That's an easier grant to write than,
the whole
The
thing.
whole thing.
Yes.
I think that's better, yeah.
okay.
I think we need to hear, we'll want to hear their rationale, what their input is, what, how they got to where they are. And I think the citizens of the town need to hear it too.
Right.
I think they need to hear it. So,
I think it makes sense.
is that okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Good.
Okay, so motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you.
30 days, huh?
Okay, next thing on the agenda is, where the heck are we? Item 10, 131 Elliott Street, authorization. And Joe, why don't you come on up? Let me first explain what this is. This is more a protective thing. There is a section of the Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31, which basically, that section of general law starts off by saying you cannot spend any money that hasn't been appropriated. However, if there is an emergency situation, a natural disaster that causes imminent danger to the general public, and it goes beyond that, say, or any other, anything else that would cause imminent danger to the general public, then the Board of Selectmen can take a vote to authorize the expenditure of funds that must be approved by DCR. Not DCR. DOR before it can happen. So we figured we put this here basically just to at least get that process started should we have to go through that route. So this motion and this vote is really just to give us the option of doing that. Now I can tell you that Amy talked to, just to give DOR, and you might want to come up, Amy. Amy talked to DOR just to give them a heads up that this might be coming down the pike. And who did you talk to there?
I spoke to Martin Demuna, who's our local representative from the Department of Revenue, as well as Gerard Perry, who's the Director of Accounts, who, according to Chapter 44, Section 31,
Yep.
If we were to do this, it would need to be approved by him. Do
Right.
you want me to explain?
Yeah, well, let's go into the fact, he said that, first of all, in order to get it even on the table to be approved, that we would have to, what was this language?
We would have to, the Board of Selectmen would have to declare a state of
Emergency, yes. So there is a state of emergency on Elliott Street, caused by our portion of the building. So we'd first have to declare that a state of emergency. Then we'd have to submit the plan, and I think he used the, at best, dubious.
Dubious because of the part of the building being owned by the town and the other portion being owned by another party.
The fact that it's been there
It
in
makes it very
decrepit condition for
complicated.
years.
And if it's something the Board of Selectmen decides to move forward with, I'm supposed to call him tomorrow and just kind of give him an update, but he needs to talk to his legal team to even see.
Right.
You know, they'd have to research it on their end also, because it is, normally that chapter of Mass General Laws is really for like a storm damage, that type of thing, but.
Now, we have other alternatives, and we don't have to take a vote in this tonight if we don't want to. And that's why I have Joe here, is other alternatives is, the Conleys have pulled a demolition permit for their portion of the building.
They have applied for a permit. They
They
haven't
haven't
obtained
pulled
a
it,
permit.
they've applied for one. Until, they have to do a few extra things before you will issue a
That's correct.
demo permit.
Yes.
But it's expected that that appears to be moving forward.
It is expected. One of the things that they have to do, and they are supposed to act quickly and expediently, but one of the things that they have to do is they have to take their engineer and put him together in a room with their demolition contractor and come up with a plan.
As to
Say,
how to
here's how
do
we're going to
this.
approach this building and tearing it down, and here's how we expect it to go, and here's how we're going to monitor it, and here's some of the safety precautions we're going to take. That's a plan that they have to put together. I'm hopeful that we will have that very
That's
soon.
due diligence you need before you can issue a permit.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Now, they've come back to us and said, well, we can't take our portion down until you take your portion down, or we do it in conjunction with one another. And there's significant disagreement with that at this point.
Substantial disagreement. That is absolutely false. I will absolutely swear here on camera that's false.
So I guess where we're going from here is we're trying to get some pricing as to what it would cost to take down the building, our portion of the building, some pricing and feasibility as to shoring up our portion of the building. So we've got three choices. You know, one is try this route and see if it works, and tear down the building at whatever cost, tear down our portion of it. The second one is to wait till October town meeting
Risk.
and risk it, the other side falling down, or you know, and then get appropriation authorization to take it down. Or the third one is basically go back to Conley's and say, we intend to shore it at this time, and you should proceed in taking your building down, or...
Well, I think another piece of that is that if the Conley should refuse to take their building down for whatever reason, then I think we are...
We have to
in a-
condemn. Well,
we've
we already have to
condemned.
condemn. We have to order
We
to
have
take
to
it down.
act.
Yeah.
We have to act, and that would mean the town
Right.
taking down that portion. So that has to be a consideration.
Right. And by that time, I mean, still October's a few months away. So that would be a dilemma, obviously, if that were to occur, because we don't have the funding, we don't have an appropriation to take it down, we would really be forced then to try and use this Section 40, Chapter 44, Section 31.
Right.
And give it our best shot.
Right, we're all hopeful that that won't happen, of course.
Right.
But despite what the engineers have said, they've made visual assessments of what they can see. There's a lot in that building that is inaccessible, there's a lot that they cannot see. This building has been leaking for years, water. It's made of wood and steel, substantial portion of it, and it's already had a collapse. It's unfortunate the position we're in with the permitting process, but those two issues have to be separated now. We cannot count on a permit being issued by the planning board in order that to move the process forward as it was originally planned. We've had a collapse on this building. This building is right next to a T-stop. I know the board doesn't need any more explanation than that.
So what we may want to do, because again, we're not going to know how to proceed until we talk to Conley's and say that you've got to take yours down, and we're not at this point until we get funding to do so.
Right, and I've expressed that to them in a letter.
And just you proceed that way, and if they balk at that, then I guess we have to pursue alternatives. We don't have to necessarily vote this now because we'd have to vote to declare a state of emergency at the same time. So we could hold off on voting whether we want to invoke Chapter 44, Section 31 until the next meeting.
Is this money, is this just for the town portion, or is it for the whole thing?
The way this is written is just for the town portion, but if they balk and we say, well, we've got to order it taken down, we have to, as selectmen, we have to order it to be removed, then we remove it on our dime, and put a lien on the building. But then we would need appropriation to take the building down, and we're talking significant dollars. I mean, either way, we're talking fairly significant dollars.
Yeah, we do have some bids due in tomorrow. We've actually received one, but won't open it until noontime tomorrow. We're expecting a second one from contractors that we contacted.
And we've got the right to refuse any and all bids.
And we do it. We have a bid coming, I've been told a bid coming from the Conley's demolition contractor under that same package. Because they can't just take it down for us, they have to pay prevailing wage,
Right.
subject to those rules.
Right.
So, once we receive those bids on our portion, that will give us some substantial idea. We can simply do a square foot estimate on what it will cost to do the rest of the building.
Yep.
So that tomorrow at noon, we'll have a better understanding of what the costs are and could be.
So I guess the point is we may want to table any vote on this thing for right now, see what the bids come in at tomorrow, and then keep the pressure on the Conleys to take down their portion of the building.
So if I'm understanding this correct, Joe, so the Conleys will get a bid to take down their portion at
They
a
probably already
normal
have
rate?
one.
And then the town's portion will be prevailing wage?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just talking out loud here. The town's portion, could that amount, whatever it is, instead of us, looking for all this money through this Chapter 44, could the amount that their demolition contractor charges, could that be taken off the purchase price? Could that be negotiated?
Perhaps, yes. But we would have to, well, you can do that a couple of ways, yeah. But yeah, perhaps that could be done.
And then we wouldn't have to look for any money and still take it down with prevailing wage. They would just pay it all. They would build the town, and then when you go to close eventually, it would just come off the purchase and sales price.
I'm not sure if you can do that, if you'd have to convey the property to them to be able to do that, but.
So,
I think we did look into that earlier on, and that the property would have had to be conveyed to them first.
Just for clarification, are you saying that we would take it, he would take it down at his cost and we would reduce the price, or we would take it down and he would reimburse us?
No, he would take it down at the prevailing wage, the
Okay.
town's portion. And I'm going to put 100 grand on it. And then when we convey the property to them, when they get their approvals to build, we deduct 100 grand from the price they're going to pay us, which is whatever it is,
Okay.
400,000.
400,000 is the,
So they would give us 300,000 instead of 400,000.
Right, you realize that that offer's already been made and refused. But has. But
What? Say that again, Tom?
that offer has been made to the Conleys.
To reduce the price of the construction? Of the
purchase-
demolition?
No, the purchase, to reduce the purchase price,
Right.
and they refused it. To reduce it by 100.
Right, but that was just reducing it. This is actually a better deal for the town.
Well, it's the same deal. We made the offer to reduce it by 100, the purchase price that they had to pay by 100, and they take it down.
Right, but if they're being forced to take it down now, it might be, you know, it might be a different story. If you're going to force them to take it down, Joe, and it's going to cost them a lot more to take it down when the town's portion remains there. It's probably cheaper for them to take everything down at once versus taking it, you know, 3/4 of it down and shoring up the town's portion.
It is possible. I think we need to see those numbers.
Yeah, that's why we're waiting for numbers first,
Yeah.
and then we'll figure out how to proceed.
I think it could be a way of, I know we made the offer and it was rejected, but this is a couple of months later and there's
You want to reconsider it, yeah?
there's a notice to take it down now from Joe, from the building department, so.
Right. But, you know, and if we did do that, we'd still be better off conveying it to them so they don't have to use prevailing wage.
It would definitely be cheaper, yeah.
But
But I don't think they'd want to take, well, they might. I can't speak for them, but I know as a developer, I wouldn't take it if I didn't have approvals.
Are you talking about the permits from the planning board when you say approval?
Approvals from the planning board, yeah.
So, all right. So I guess the question then to the rest of the board is, do we want to do anything in terms of right now? Because the only thing on the table is the Chapter 44, Section 31 motion. And we've already heard that it's dubious at best. We still have to declare a state of emergency before we can submit it. So I'm not sure that it buys us any time right now by just voting this thing.
I think it's no harm possibly to vote it and just, I mean, we can always take it off the table.
We can vote it and take it off the table, yes.
You know, if in the
But
meantime.
before we go forward with it, like I said, even though we voted it, we need one more vote to declare a state of emergency.
We need one more vote?
Yes. Yep. So we could do it all at the same time, declare a state of emergency and do the motion for
Oh, I see. Okay.
Chapter 44, Section 31. So that's why I say it, you know, we might want to just table it for now.
Okay, I'll take your lead on it.
I'll make a motion to table it for the time being.
A second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, well, thank you.
And if you just give me a call tomorrow, Joe, when you do hear some word
Sure.
on this, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Item 11 on the agenda is approval of boards and committee appointments. The first one is Council on
Make a
Aging.
motion.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the reappointments of the following members of the Council on Aging to serve through June 2015. Jean Leslie, Roger Connor, Louise Baveris, and to approve the following members through June 2014. Regina Dobson, Carolyn Everett, Deborah Neely, and Elva S. Proctor.
Those are associate members, that's all. Supposed to approve the following associate.
Associate members.
Second motion.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Make a motion to approve the reappointments of Leslie Collins and Joseph Tierney to Commission on Disability to serve through July 2015.
Second motion.
Made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Make a motion to approve Joseph M. Reardon as the town's Norfolk County representative to serve through August 2013.
Second motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Now, this next one is a selectman appointment because of a vacancy in the retirement board.
Make a motion to approve the appointment of John King as the town's appointment to the retirement board to serve through August 2015.
Second motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, number 12 is approval of Public Square Rosary.
Make a motion to approve a request for a public square gathering on the deck at East Milton Square for a quiet, prayerful recitation of the Rosary and singing of hymns on Saturday, October 13, 2012, from noon to 2 p.m.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, next one is approval of the Monster Dash.
Motion to approve the use of the town's streets and ways for the 14th annual Milton Monster Dash that will take place on Sunday, October 28, 2012. Rain, snow date of Sunday, November 4th. And will raise funds for the elementary school science programs in memory of Sam Ciccello.
Second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, number 14 is a slight change because I don't think we need a special audit. And let me explain what this is first. What we have before us, we believe, is an accounting error. Strictly an accounting error that somehow needs to be rectified. And it does involve the police budget. We believe what has happened is that there was overtime. The time was incurred in fiscal year 2012. It appears to maybe 3 or 4 days worth of overtime that was paid, and as we have it right now, if we do nothing differently, will be charged to fiscal year 13. And that is, in the small L of things, illegal. It's a violation of the accounting rules under the Mass General laws. If an expense is incurred in a fiscal year, then it must be charged that fiscal year. You have up until the 15th day of the month after the close of the fiscal year to pay it and include it in. And Amy, why don't you come up, because you can probably better explain this than me. Beyond that 15th day, and because it's payroll, it can't be encumbered. So I guess that's a problem.
Right, so you can't encumber payroll, but what we normally do is we accrue it. And by that, we record the expenditure in the fiscal year it was earned by the employee, and we set up a liability. In order to do that, I need the information on what the dollar value of it is.
Now, it gets further complicated because it appears that if we do that, then the police department budget is going to be exceeded by, again, probably not a great deal of money, but
No, I mean, I have no idea what the dollar value is. I would guess if it's 3 days on average, maybe a week, overtime might be on the high side, 15,000. So if you erred on the high side, 3 days might be 7,500.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I don't have that level of detail in my records.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the expenditures do pretty much equal the appropriation. So whatever accrual it is would throw it into a deficit position or
Right.
an over expenditure.
which is equally a violation of laws and regulations of Massachusetts. It would, at best, it would have to be an unpaid bill into the next fiscal year.
Well, it can't, I don't think it falls under that because I believe, and again, I can't see it on what I have, but what I'm being told is that it was probably paid in the first payroll of fiscal 13, which is within the 15 days. The problem is it needs to be booked back to fiscal 12.
Right.
So it's already been paid, so it doesn't, I don't believe it falls under the definition of an unpaid expenditure. What that would be is if the records indicated that it was 12 and I saw that there wasn't enough, I would have had to kick it out of the warrant.
And not pay.
But everything on the warrant indicates, from what I can tell, is that it was 13, so there's no visibility there that it was 12. This was more something that was
So our problem is we
recently
either
brought
have to correct it, or we have a responsibility to inform the auditors that the situation is there. We're in charge of governance. Under accounting or under auditing standards, the auditors have the responsibility to rely on us to be forthcoming with whatever we know to be the case. So we do have that responsibility. Amy has that responsibility as town accountant also.
Can I ask, is the reason it was paid in 13 because there was no money left in the budget?
Presumably, yes.
I don't know the answer to it.
But don't know.
But my understanding of what we're talking about here is that individuals were paid money that was due them, and they were duly paid, but there was a clerical error that was made that they got, that this money was for an area around the change of the time of the fiscal year, and so they were incorrectly paid in fiscal year 2013 instead of 12, and to me that's like a clerical error, so I'd suggest we fix the clerical error.
Okay, when we fix the clerical error, they will be over budget, and that creates a problem.
So if you fix the error, it's a problem?
Yes.
Well, what that will do is, when in this, I did do accruals in other departments. I had sent out an email on July 11th, I think. When I realized that June 30th fell on a Saturday, that this was potentially a problem, I sent out an email to all department heads requesting that they give me information on if there's any fiscal 12 payroll included in a fiscal 13 warrant and how much that was so that I could properly book it. I did do that for some departments, fire department, DPW were the two main ones. The other ones that I thought might have them were police, schools, and library. Library has Saturday hours, but it was included, they run their weekend through Saturday, so they included it through the 30th. The police department, I did talk to their payroll person, and she included that Saturday that Saturday, the 30th, and she pulled in 8 days. So I thought we were good. I thought everything was good. So when I didn't hear anything back in response from all the other departments, it made sense from discussions I had and the nature of, like, I wouldn't expect the assessors or the treasurer's office to have Saturday time on that Saturday because we're not open, but those other departments I mentioned, it was reasonable that there would be some. So I thought we were good, and then just today something came up that indicated that there was potentially 3 days of overtime from the 28th, 29th, and 30th that was paid in 13 that I wasn't aware of. So this is a last minute thing that came up.
Now the ramifications, okay, the ramifications are probably a slight slap on the wrist from DOR, a management letter comment clearly in the audit report that this situation has occurred, and and there should be better controls and whatnot to make it not occur in the future, and that's probably all that will take place out of it, but again, we have to tell Amy how to proceed.
And it will affect free cash because it's an expenditure above appropriation, so it will be deducted from the free cash calculation
Yep.
when it's certified, which will be sometime
Right.
in the fall.
How much money are we talking about?
We don't know, but.
We don't know, because my payroll, what I get is total dollars for the pay period. So I don't have that level of detail.
So I guess
So I would need to
if
get
we're going to
that.
correct it, we have to ask Amy to go
Or-
and find out, determine the amount by talking to the police department, administrative personnel, to find out what the overtime was for that period of time.
You got the information? Can we bring the chief up, or?
If you want, sure. No problem.
Do you want me to?
You can stay up.
So let me give you a little bit of history, so how we got to this. As we reach the end of any fiscal year, Amy's correct in that you have your personnel side and your general side. So in FY12, we had several issues. On the personnel side is, and I've been before this board several times, and there's a multitude of back and forth between emails and letters, was clearly we were running shorthanded, and our overtime demands were significant in 12, as they have been almost every year that I've been chief. As Mr. Hurley said tonight, when you have only 1.8% growth every year, the model that we use, it just doesn't. We're a police department designed to be at 55 officers. In my first year in 2007, I thought that maybe we'd get to 53. We haven't breached 50 yet. We're at 50, and every time you lose someone or someone, it just compounds that much more. So on the personnel side, it was that issue. Compound that with the 350th being thrown, as we know, that was discussion. That was a lot of money that we had to cover that I began to plan for. Clearly, in an issue like this, and I had one issue prior, there's Chapter 4434B, which was in the final 30-day effect, final 90 days of your fiscal year. You can request to move up to 5% from your personnel side to your general side, or vice versa.
That's the 3%.
3%.
The 3%, excuse me, the
It's-
3%, correct.
It starts from May, yeah, it starts from beginning of May through July.
So
July.
the difficulty
April, May,
came there that there was one project, which is a critical project to the operation of the police department, which was the update and improvements to the lockup. And when we handle prisoners, that's a critical. We've been written up numerous times by the state on this. So this was a project we went out to bid on twice. The town meeting had approved, I think it was about $30-something thousand. The first bid came in at 81. We rebid it again, came in at 50. I wrote to Amy, and I actually gave her a plan as to how we would do it and how we would cover that. But I knew, though, that by getting as much of it done as we could, to at least bring us up to grade, that would negate any ability I would have to exercise that statute by moving any of the 3%, either personnel side to general or general to personnel.
Right, but that statute also allows you to move it from another department, too. We could have moved it from DPW, we could have moved it from fire, we could have moved it from other departments.
In defense of that, I was told there was no money. And that was one conversation that Kevin and I had about living within the budget, that this was going to be really tough. There was no money in other budgets. And I took them, and I lived by that. And I've been within budget in 5 years in a row. So that came down to the last week of the fiscal year, which was, and it was specifically for overtime. And as you know, I've committed to 2 people 7 days a week to that Belvoir Road neighborhood, which we've funded exclusively. They don't count on manning. As well as it's a busy time of year. Anything around the 4th of July parties, we're always busy. So it was either I stop all overtime for the last 2 weeks, or we try. I've been as creative as I possibly can. And you can, as I say, I welcome you to look at anything. Look at the overtime every week. I break down my overtime week by week, go through it. It was either go through it, or could I hold up, because this happens on a weekly basis anyway, not overtime. You know, sometimes a supervisor may not put overtime in, or some overtime may not go until second week. What I called and asked my payroll personnel, was there a precedent at the end of a fiscal year not to pay all the overtime on the last week? Could any of the overtime be carried over? And I was told that there was a precedent, and it had in fact been done several times. So I took that at face value. The next step was, I asked both unions, because I didn't want it to get into a grievance, could they, if I split the last week, I wasn't sure if it would be 3 days or 2 days, if I split the last week, could they live with that? And they accepted that, and it said yes. So that was how we approached that. it wasn't a personnel issue in that I had someone's salary to pay and I couldn't make the salary. It was, do we cease all overtime and not provide the level of services that the citizens are expecting, or keep it going and carry over the payment of all the overtime 1 week into the next fiscal year, which I only did because I was told there was a past precedent for it.
Yeah, okay. And basically all we're saying right now is that past precedent aside,
May not be legal.
it's not legal.
Right. I understand that now.
So we do need to know the amount.
I haven't. It's sitting, I didn't bring it with me because I didn't know, but it's sitting right on my desk, and it's not an exorbitant amount of money. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah, for 3 days of overtime, you wouldn't think it would be a ton of money, but we should get it moved into the correct accounting period, and just take the lump on the.
Right.
But I guess, Rich, in the future, you know, the board really should know about it because, you know, in this case, we could have done something about it. You know, that we had reserve funds that are getting turned back in.
Well, yeah, you're correct there, and the final issue was also, as you know, the gas. I had come forward. The biggest issue which surfaced this year was that the town went into a collaborative, gas went through the roof. And in a 15-year history, this had never happened. And so what was budgeted at $100,000 for gasoline was in excess of $150,000. And I had come both to the board and to the warrant committee early on, as early as January, anticipating that it would be $60,000 that I would need. And if you recall, the final reserve fund transfer that I asked for was only 17. I ate all of that myself. So I'm not here to try and just say, if I had not believed that past precedent existed, I would have asked for more money, as you say, in the RFT, and not done this.
So I guess that's the way we'll handle it. Is we'll just get it in the correct accounting period, and I guess you know, just inform the auditors that there's a budget overrun. I mean, they're going to see it anyways, but
Right. Okay.
Short of that, we'll just put it in the accrual and get it into FY12 and let the chips fall where they may in terms of the budget overrun. I think that's all we can really do.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chief, one
Go ahead.
final thing before you go. I just want to congratulate your office's National Night Out last night. Tremendous attendance and a great community event, and I want to congratulate all the people that contributed to that community event. I thought it was super.
Thank you. I wrote, and I know it's a long night for you, so I'll just be brief. And I wrote just very succinctly that, you know, this has been a difficult year. We've had a lot of issues. I mean, we had serious issues in Belleville that we dealt with. We had over 20 meetings, and we haven't had a problem there now in weeks. And one of the things about this community, and that can happen all throughout the town, but one of the things about this community that I've always been the proudest of is that we have numerous positive interactions and numerous partnerships throughout the town, not just with citizen groups, but with all our government partners and other agencies. And last night, it's true, almost over 2,000 people showed up at the police station. And that's really, don't thank me, thank the people who live here, because it's really a credit to them.
Yeah, it's always a good time. It's a well-run program.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to hand a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Adjourn.